good evening. Hope you've had a really good Monday. Um, I'm joined this evening by Emma and Helen, um, and we are talking about the topic emotional labour, a woman's job, who cares? So, Helen, this sort of was spurred on by your the up and coming talk that you're doing at the Women of the World Festival at the weekend. So would you like to sort of introduce yourself first and explain a little bit about the topic and why you're going to be talking about that topic at the festival?
Yeah, so I work for an organisation called Age Space, which is a social enterprise, and we're an online platform promoting information and advice on all things to do with elderly care, essentially looking after your parents. So the way the social care system is going at the moment, the responsibility of looking after your parents tends to be falling to family members and children. So I'm going to the conference, the WOW Festival, to talk about essentially it's another thing that women are now having to do. So research has shown that it tends to fall to women, wives, to organise parental care. And not exclusively, obviously some men do it, but on the whole it tends to be our responsibility. And what tends to be happening is that we are still looking after our own children, and we're having to then think about care for our parents. So we're now in a kind of sandwich generation. And I suppose what we're trying to do at Age Space is just trying to offer support and advice and bring everything into one place. Those of you who have embarked on the journey already will know that there's quite a lot involved with looking after your parents, whether that's looking after the finances, the legal side of things, looking for care, whether that's in the home or in a care home. Then you've got all the other issues around sort of health and dementia. So what Age Space has tried to do is bring it all into one place. And a bit like, I suppose we have been dubbed by the media as the net mums for the middle-aged. So it's a platform really for all that information. And what we've recently launched is the Bad Daughters Club, which is an online forum for women who are going through this, because actually it's incredibly stressful and emotional. And there's a lot of feelings of anger and guilt associated with it. You don't necessarily want to look after your parents. It's not really the kind of the expected order of things. They looked after you. It's a bit of a shock when you're then having to look after them. So we've launched the Bad Daughters Club. So that's essentially what the WOW Festival, I'm sitting on the panel for emotional labour, a woman's job, who cares? And that's what I'm going to be bringing to it really. We're going to talk about the sandwich generation and how and why it is that women are now having to take on the majority of that care when they've maybe just finished all the other care for their kids.
It's absolutely exhausting just thinking about it. Like, I'm exhausted just looking after the children, but thinking, I think my parents are only in their mid-50s, but sometimes my dad need looking after already, bless him. But
I've just written something for the festival, and it was a job spec for for looking after your parents, and essentially it mirrors what you do looking after young children. So I don't think the irony would be lost in whoever in that audience, whether they're young mums or whether they're middle-aged mums. It's essentially a very similar role, a very demanding role, often not appreciated or thanked. And yeah, it's a difficult one really. It is exhausting.
Yeah, and I think you they say that you start as baby and you go all the way sort of through, and then you kind of end up needing care like you did as a child. So it's kind of that sort of whole life cycle anyway, isn't it? So as a person. So Emma, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. And would you like to just introduce yourself so people have a little bit of a background as to what you do and who you are?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my name's Emma, and I founded an events company in November, which was brought about because as a mum second time round, I couldn't go back to the job that I originally had because I couldn't travel anymore. Or I didn't want to travel. I didn't want the stress of getting two children to two different nurseries, because that's what it would have been. And I came across women across the country who were going to events, and it's kind of like a support, a glamorous night out, and it's people who've become famous on Instagram who are parents because of various reasons, have various causes or campaigns or businesses. And women were gathering and hearing from these speakers, and I wanted to go to them because I want to find out, how do women manage small children and be themselves and be a wife and be a friend and daughter and do all the things that we're meant to do. So I moaned about it to my husband, and he was like, well, why don't you do it? And I thought, I'm not sure I can. But I had some encouragement from various people, including Katie Kirby, who wrote the book Half a Gin. She's one of my uni friends. So she did my launch event, and then it's sort of taken off from there. And the idea is that I want to create events that inspire or entertain parents, because lots of events and lots of activities are for children, and actually as a parent you still want to do something for yourself, or you should try and carve out something for yourself, because it becomes not monotonous, that's the wrong word, because obviously having children is great in many ways, but you're still an individual in your own right. So why can't you look forward to something where you're going to meet with like-minded people? And you might come away with an idea, or you might come away thinking, I'm really happy with where I am, but it's good to hear from other people. So that's what I do. So I'm still at the other end. I'm not at that age, that sort of area yet. My parents are quite young. But, you know, emotional labour, from my perspective, I didn't even know about all this emotional labour. I was just a career woman who worked really hard. I became a parent. Was quite unmaternal actually, and not very domestic. So you can imagine like having 2 children. I'm like, oh my God, is this everything you're supposed to do? And it is, and you've just got to get on with it in a way, which is what I've learned. So by meeting lots of women actually the last 6 months, it's helped me come to terms with the reality is you just got to get on with it and just try and be okay with that and move on and just crack on. I say it's not a big solution, is it? But that's where I'm at the moment. My children are 4 and 1, so they're small.
Yeah, same sort of age as mine. Mine are 5 and 2. Well, coming up for 2. So it is, and I always describe motherhood as being slapped in the face with a saucepan, because that is what it kind of is like, isn't it? You think,
no, what you're going into really, you don't see it, do you?
No. Well, you see all this. You sign up to Baby Centre and you sign up to all these things, and during your pregnancy you're like all this expectation, and then the reality hits, and it's like crying on the kitchen floor with a massive tub of Nutella and kind of eating the whole in one hit, and it's kind of. But I suppose that's the thing, Emma. At least you kind of, like you say, meet in like-minded people, and people in that same situation does give you, it gives you clarity that you're only human and you still need to be you, not just a mum and a parent. It's kind of that. And I suppose you both talk, and it's really sort of the word guilt in my head is just, I have guilt, mum guilt all the time, like guilt for anything basically. If I'm working, I'm guilty because I've left the children. If I've got the children, I'm trying to answer work emails and I feel guilty that I'm not working and putting my efforts into that, or I feel guilty because I'm not giving my husband my full attention, or so it's constant, whatever your situation is at the time. It's that constant guilt day and night all the time, isn't it? And I suppose, Helen, looking at what you're looking at with that sandwich scenario, whereby you've then got your parents in the mix of that, haven't you?
Yeah. I just literally have put my daughter to bed crying because I was getting really stressed about trying to do this, and at 5 to 8 she asked for some food, and of course I was like, 5 to 8, why are you asking for food now? So she started crying. And I suppose on top of what I'm doing at the moment, I'm also got a new job as editor for Muddy Stilettos, for which the awards launched today, plug. And so I'm really juggling at the moment, and I try to have the conversation. Now I've got 3 girls, and I'm a single mum, and mine are 5, 9 and 11. And I just kind of tried to in the moment of trying to calm her down and give her a crumpet, I try to say, you know, please bear with me. You know, I want you to be proud of me. I'm trying to be a successful businesswoman, and I want you to look up to me. I want to inspire you. And I know it's really, really crazy at the moment, but things will calm down. And, you know, I think essentially they're good girls, and, you know, they do want to be strong. I want them to be strong, independent women as well. The bit about, I think Emma said about, you know, we have to get on with it. That's kind of true. But I think there's definitely some discussions that need to be had around responsibilities, and whether that's to do with educating children about the kind of responsibilities, domestic responsibilities, making boys, you know, making it more okay for boys to take on those roles. And then also looking at kind of the workplace and how there's a lot that's been done around sort of parental policies and support, but there just needs to be more done around enabling flexible working, and just a big discussion really about making it more acceptable. Because when I became a mother, I was working full-time in London, and I moved back to Norfolk so my parents could help. And I was obviously shocked and overwhelmed by everything that was involved. But I think what kind of happened over the years was suddenly, not only was I the mother and sort of care of my children, I became the care of my husband and his parents, and I was doing all the domestic stuff, all the cooking and the cleaning, and to the point where I kind of got told that I demasculated him and that he was no longer able to do any of those things. So I think this is the problem with women. We tend to be able to multitask, and we juggle, you know, we constantly juggle. And they can, you know, you can keep on throwing balls at us and we'll just keep on juggling because, you know, we don't want to let that, you know, anything drop. I think that's the problem.
Quarterly breakdowns, that's what I have.
Yeah. I had one of them last night, so this came at the right time, because literally last night I had that, you know, there was too many balls in the air, and I literally dropped a few, and literally I just, you know, to the point of like in tears most of the night with my husband, kind of. I'm really lucky because my husband's really supportive, and he does help. We have a cleaner, which we're really lucky, you know, we can afford that. I'm like Emma, I'm the most undomesticated mother. Like, you know, I just want to be a kid with them. I kind of don't want to do all the, you know, that stuff that you kind of have to do. You know, I don't even know where my iron is in my house, to be honest.
Oh, I don't iron.
No.
You have to drop things, and so I don't iron.
And gardening, that's another thing I don't do. I don't do that either. But that's the thing, like, people look at you, and I don't know whether, like last night I said to my husband, it's not that you're not supportive or my family isn't supportive, it's just I have that constant guilt, and it's kind of, I put that pressure on myself to say, well, I should still be doing all these things. So I think sometimes it's not that, is that a society thing whereby you're still thinking that you should be doing these, you know, all the domestic stuff, you know, and you're being hard on yourself because, you know, you might be seeing another mum on Facebook who's like baking cookies. You know, I don't think that eating cookie mix raw counts as making but
I have a constant dialogue in my head. So you can't win. Whatever you do, you can't win. In a way, you might as well just not stop worrying, because if you're doing something with your kids, my dialogue is like, well, so and so probably do it like that and probably do it better than this. So maybe I should be doing it like this, or should be is a good word for this sort of emotional labour stuff, I think, because in my head it's always like, oh, you should be doing this, or you should do that. You need to call your grandma. You need to do this. You should. And I think that it's definitely a society thing, because if you're a working mum, you can't win. If you're a part-time mum, you can't win. If you're a non-working mum, you can't win. And as a woman, I don't know, I think no one takes into, so to me, the emotional labour, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but it's the bit about who's going to do the online shop, who's going to do the meal planning, who's going to do all get the birthday present and the birthday card and go to the party and all those extra frippery things that no one sees, but it's like a whole nother job. So you've got your work, you've got your childcare, you've got your house, you've got your family, and it's like that coordination. If you didn't do it, you'd feel guilty for not doing it.
We we did some research, and it's exactly the same reflected when you're like looking after your parents. It's because, you know, we ask, you know, and then who else will do it? That's the question. Who else will do it? And that's the kind of, which essentially gives us no choice.
Yeah, I think that's why I had this breakdown yesterday, was that, you know, as much as my husband is really supportive and I'm very lucky, I was married before and that husband was really unsupportive and we didn't have children, luckily. So God knows what that would have been like. But, you know, it was kind of that, you know, we were just in jest saying, you know, I said, oh, I need to give up work because literally I've got like so much going on outside of work, you know, and especially with my daughter starting school this year, it was kind of, you know, you think you have more time, but actually you're kind of got all the assemblies that you don't go to, so you're a bad mother, you know, you've got all the additional things, the non-school uniforms to think about and all that you don't kind of factor in. And I sort of said, I want to, you know, I need to quit work. And my husband sort of turned around and said, oh, but you can't, because if not, we won't be able to have holidays, we won't have, and then that's kind of that lies at your door then, because if you couldn't work because you're so overwhelmed with these things, then that's going to be your fault. So I think last night had this breakdown because I was literally like, I'm trapped. I have nowhere to go. I don't have a choice. I have to, you know, they're my children. I love them dearly, you know, with everything. But I'm the one it falls down to get them up in the morning and sorted and out the door and whatnot.
That's kind of the problem, isn't it? It's always, that's the thing. We're always saying it's us, that we have to do that. We've got to do. And we don't. I think that's the point, is we don't. And it's about sharing that responsibility, and it's about creating the next generation who will welcome that, and it won't be seen as a kind of male-female role. You know, there've been so many developments over the last 100 years. Surely we've got to be on a path where we can shift this, so women aren't having breakdowns because they want to have it all. You know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do it all. It's just about how we share that out and how we make that easier for women. And I really think that's an educating thing for schools and parents.
Well, it goes back to what you said a moment ago about, you know, that pep talk you had with your daughter earlier. You know, I was the same. My husband called me in the office in my garage, and he called me with my daughter in absolute tears because she wanted to speak to me before bed, and obviously that made it even worse. But then obviously the mum guilt creeps in for me again, and you get that vicious cycle, because I'm then feeling guilty. Should I go in? It's 20 to 8, you know, you know, you're constant, like Emma said, there's that constant dialogue and battle in your head, like, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you're a bad mother, you're a bad boss, you're a bad everything. And it's just like absolutely exhausting, isn't it, really?
Yeah. It's exhausting just having the dialogue, let alone actually doing everything on top of it. But yeah, I mean, it's similar when it comes to your parents again, that, you know, if you put your parents into care, you're judged. So it's similar to, you know, if you put your children into nursery so you can work, if you don't go and see them enough, you're judged. But this is the thing, the brother isn't judged, you know, the son isn't judged. It's the woman that's judged, because it's seen as her role to care. And again, it just takes away our choice when we've got that, you know, we've got all that judging going on. And I don't know how, and I suppose the debate on Sunday will kind of explore some of that and try and come up with some ways. I think one of the big things is things like you're doing with your networking, and things like our Bad Daughters Club. It is about offering support and advice. And Emma being, you know, enabling women to go out and listen to other women and hopefully come back with some kind of solutions. So there's some really good kind of supportive things happening for women, but it's, you know, it's how we can change the future.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, saying about judgments. You know, not only do we judge ourselves, but it's a lot of other people's opinions. I know my mum's watching, so she was involved in this thing yesterday. So hi, Mum, I do love you, even though I'm a nightmare sometimes. But yeah, and you know, like my mum, for example, you know, she has an opinion like everyone else, and she means well when she says that opinion or raises it. You know, me and my mum are ever so close, you know, and I do respect her opinion. But sometimes when you're going through, you know, bad things yourself, and you've got enough guilt going on in your head from you, you know, that then opinion, you know, or that just flippant comment anyone could say, you know, like you meet and anyone could just say, oh, well, don't you do the ironing in your house? You know, that kind of alarm bells go off in your head almost, and that then causes you to go more down that spiral of self-hate and, you know, self-destruction.
You've got to try and build a little wall around you against those sort of comments, though, because you could drive yourself mad. I mean, I just think people don't know, especially there's a generation of women who might be my parents, probably my mum. There's a different them. I just think now it's not harder now, but you're just trying to do more. You didn't have phones in those days, so you weren't always switched on, for example. So it's like two sides of one coin, isn't it? I think for our generation, we're trying to do a lot, and why shouldn't we? But if my mum says to me, she'd probably say the same sort of thing about the ironing or the housework. Why don't you do the housework every day? I'm like, no. I just try and laugh about it because I can't take that on as well, because it's not realistic.
Well, that's the thing. There's only so many hours, you know, 7 days a week. There's only, you know, everyone's got the same time. So it's like, I suppose, looking at your diary and your plan for that week and saying, well, what's got to give? Because something's got to give. You know, in my head, I think, you know, is it better that I take my daughter to ballet? You know, I take my son to mini monkey gym that he enjoys, you know, and I have fun with the kids and overdoing things like the ironing and stuff like that. You know, is it better to do that than, and I've still got to work because obviously like the money situation, so you can't, and I obviously want to have something for myself, and for me, you know, you're probably the same, you know, your work is important to you, and that's kind of, a lot of people say, oh, you'll burn yourself out because of work, but actually a lot of the stuff I do, I really enjoy it, so that's kind of like sort of for me some of it. But people say, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't work so hard, or you know, maybe you shouldn't go out as often. You're kind of like, well, why should I sacrifice being me? It's almost like, I think last night the meltdown was kind of in, you know, well, what am I expected to do? Just, you know, do the kids stuff and look after the kids and sort them out and work. They're the only two things I should be doing over actually, you know, I kind of want that life outside of those things as well. But it's almost like you then feel guilty for having that. You shouldn't have that. Like there's loads around like self-care and this, that and the other. But, you know, and you think, oh, well, other people are doing that, so I'd like to, you know, go for a massage or this, that and the other. But I know with me, if I go and do something like a spa day or something, I'm constantly checking my phone or feeling guilty that I'm kind of not, the kids aren't being looked after for me to work, if that makes sense.
I'd definitely say, because both of you have got quite young children, and when they get older, it does get easier. In that,
I hope so.
They become obviously a lot more self-sufficient, and you can stick them on a tablet or whatever when you work, which isn't, you know.
Yeah, Ella is a lot easier now, my daughter, in all fairness. But.
And also they can, with the housework and stuff like that, you know, mine have chores now, you know, so they earn a bit of pocket money and they help me out by doing the housework, which I don't want to do and don't seem to have the time to do. Which again, I haven't got sons, but if you've got sons, and I think that's a brilliant thing to do, because, you know, they should be learn from an early age how to put a hoover around and put a wash on, and maybe they'll be a little bit more receptive to it when they're married and have got a wife and kids.
I think I'm quite lucky because with my husband and his brother, they're both very domesticated. They both love cooking. So me and my sister-in-law are really lucky because they like pitch in and do loads of stuff. So she's.
You shouldn't be saying you're lucky.
No. Well, that is what I was then going to say, because like in my head I then said, oh, they pitch in, but actually, you know, they you know, it's not. But that's the thing. You feel it's your job to begin with. And I was having a conversation with a friend this morning. And she was saying, now when my husband tells me what I you know, he's loaded the dishwasher, or he's bathed the kids, or he's some, you know, if he sort of comes and tells her, it's like he comes for a medal, he comes for that praise. Okay, and she just walks off. Whereas she used to be like, oh, thanks so much for helping me, but actually that's, you know, when she's got a job as well, you know, she said, I don't go up to him and go, oh, you know, I washed the dog's bum, you know, or I can't, you know, you don't do it as a woman. You kind of just get on with it. And I always laugh with my husband because, you know, it's probably coincidence or maybe not, I don't know. But he seems to always go and wash up or hang the washing up when we've got company. It's kind of like that, look what I do, almost. And I'm like, really? I've done stuff all day. And yeah, I haven't, you know, I almost need to take pictures all day and kind of put them up on the wall and go, look at my day.
I think there's another thing as well that falls down to women, which is about keeping in touch with people and keeping in touch with family and friends. Do you find it always seems to be down to the women to organise stuff like that, and the men would happily just go on their own merry way forever, not ever interacting with their family ever again if you didn't make things happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And things like birthdays and Christmases, it falls on you to kind of do all of that, the cards, the presents, and the research and stuff, and
the worry about it, yeah.
And organising holidays, doing all the packing, the washing, getting everything ready. Yeah. But I don't know whether that's because, I don't know, maybe there is a little bit of truth in that we just do it because, you know, I'm potentially a little bit of a control freak, and I worry that if I delegate, it won't get done. So
or not done at the time that you want it to be done.
Yeah. And so maybe we make a rod for our own back a little bit by being so super organised, and then it just becomes kind of self-perpetuating, really, in that they just get used to it and we get on with it.
But I suppose with the packing scenario, like you say, I don't think it's being a control freak. It's actually kind of, you know that the kids have got what they need. And in all fairness, I don't think my partner would know like what teddy my kids would want packing. If not, they're going to have a complete meltdown. Like you know, he wouldn't know because you know, they're the things that women take note of. Whereas, you know, with him, he'd just pack any old teddy, and then that would cause like a massive, you know, meltdown. So it's kind of
the thing, isn't it? They need to know. I think that's, you know, there's a kind of, how much of it do they just let you get on with it because it's easier and you will do it, and therefore, you know, that's the way it will always be. You know, it's about letting go a little bit, I suppose, as women, and saying, actually,
what's the worst that will happen? What's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah, and it's like, you know, you're a clever person, you have a job, you can organise stuff, so watch me pack once. You know that they have to wear underwear and have night shirts, and they do have a teddy to go to sleep with, so, you know, go for it. And do it when they're going away by themselves with them, so you don't have to deal with the fallout when you get to the other end.
Yeah. I should have done, because I went on I've just had my 30th, and I went on a spa weekend, and my husband, out of the blue, said, I'm going to take the kids to Colchester Zoo and stay in a Holiday Inn overnight. Wow. I was like, for one, I thought, are you crazy? But then I also thought, you don't know what it's like to have the kids on your own usually, because normally he'll go to his mum's or, you know, have someone there for support. So, but, you know, give him credit, not a lot of men would do that, would they? So, do you know what I mean? And he did, he took them, and, you know, so I give him that. You know, he is good, better than a lot of men, I know, but still, it's kind of that I had to pack for that, because I was sort of like, I need to pack, but I didn't pack his stuff, in all fairness. So, you know, he probably went commando all weekend because he probably forgot his underpants, but you know.
Yeah, I think we've got to loosen the control a little bit. I mean, there's obviously a big fear that they're going to mess up, but like Emma said, what's the worst that can happen, really, as long as there's nothing dangerous.
But also with this situation, like going back to what Emma said earlier about the whole building that wall around you, and kind of, is it that we do it as well because if we don't pack or whatnot, or say something happened and, you know, the teddy did get forgotten, would it then feel like it fall on us? You know, would you get someone comment and judge saying, oh well, maybe, you know, you're their mum, you should have packed, do you know what I mean? So I sometimes think, oh, I need to do these things, because also if I don't and something goes wrong, then it falls at my doorstep that it.
Would you judge another mother? You
No,
know,
I wouldn't.
you've heard that story. Would you judge? Because I think,
No.
you know, there's something about some, you know, solidarity here, and we're all feeling the same. I certainly wouldn't judge another mother, because I know that it's probably happened to me. So again, we're putting that kind of self-imposed guilt and judgment on ourselves. We're thinking that's what's going to happen, but actually the reality is nobody is going to say anything or judge you.
Mm.
You know,
I think especially other mums don't tend to, you know, you get the odd few, but most, I suppose it goes back to you, Emma, and what you do. It's about getting those, you know, like-minded people together to all kind of have a rant together.
The people who I invite generally are all in that honest parenting camp, which wasn't there. I don't think it was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. So I've got a friend who's got a 10-year-old, and she said at that point no one admitted, no one admitted when they lost their rag, or then when it was hard, and that's obviously been something that's developed over the last few years. And I love that, because I think why lie? Like, why? It has its ups and downs, and to know that everyone else has those similar feelings is so reassuring. And I'm always really honest. I met someone this time last year, she's a life coach, who helped me just decide whether to do this or not, this business. And I was like, just talking generally to her. She said, I've never met anyone as honest as you, but I thought everyone was honest like that, but they're not. People do try and keep their. I just think there's a lot to be said for people knowing it's okay to think certain things, and there's still things now. I mean, what you were talking about earlier, Helen, about how people feel guilty for putting their parents into homes, and I think you're at your end, the people that are experiencing that, it's almost harder from my end, because it's more normal now to talk about the pitfalls of parenting, especially for small children. I don't know what it's like for older children yet, because I'm not there. And it's fine to moan about the baby or the toddler, because they're all like that, and they all do the same sort of things. Whereas when it's parents, that must be really hard to talk to people about how.
I think it's still quite taboo, you know, because there's obviously a respect that you have for your parents. So you wouldn't ordinarily, I mean, we might have a little bit of a moan about our mums and our mum-in-laws when they're judging us, but ordinarily we wouldn't be critical of our parents, because we have respect. And so it is difficult, and it is taboo. And when your parents are getting older and difficult, and, you know, if they do have dementia, they can get quite abusive, quite rude, and, you know, it is difficult, because you don't want to admit to your friends that they are changing. You certainly wouldn't have a discussion around kind of like adult nappies around the dinner table, you know, because that's just not something that is talked about, but it is a reality. So definitely I think we need to open up that discussion, and we need to make it more accessible. We need to be able to enable people to talk about these things. So maybe that's could be on your next thing, Emma. We could talk about, you know, the older generation maybe, and trying to create a forum where people can talk about those things. So, which is why we launched the Bad Daughters Club.
I was then going to say, Helen, how do people get involved in that? Because I know, you know, think off the top of my head, a friend at the moment who's going through her, I think her grandma's quite elderly, but her and her parents are sort of, it just made me think of it, because you said about being abusive and stuff like that, and they had loads of problems like with that, and she's got young children like I have, and so she's kind of that first point of call, because her mum and dad can't cope with the now situation and stuff. So how do people get involved with Bad Daughters Club?
So it's on our forum on AgeSpace. So if you go to agespace.org.uk, and there's a forum there, and there's a thread called Bad Daughters Club. So it's just a very honest space, really, where women, tends to be women, obviously, bad daughters, and, you know, they just kind of talk about their guilt. It's so similar to the forums on, you know, Net Matters or Mumsnet. You know, it's I remember when I first had Scarlett and she was a baby and I was breastfeeding, which seemed like hours. And I went onto one of those chat rooms and said, oh my God, will she ever get off my boob? It seems to be going on forever. And I got completely kind of vilified by all these women going, oh, that's what you should expect. That's what babies, they have to, you know, they can stay on as long as they want. So it wasn't as open, you know, people weren't honest. And I got like kind of whipped really for doing that. And I think it's the same now. And, you know, we need a space for women to be able to talk about these issues. I mean, what would be lovely really is if the Bad Daughters Club came offline, you know, and these women came together informally in a book group or a wine club or whatever, and could sit with each other and talk, you know, because a lot of stuff is offline. And I think people need, I think, you know, maybe it's a little bit old fashioned, but I think people need to connect and be with each other in a room.
I think meeting in real life is more important because everything's so online now. And
yeah,
online obviously is brilliant without it, but there is nothing. I remember conversations with people that I've had at my events, like much more than I remember emails and stuff. It's definitely worth people meeting each other in real life.
Definitely.
And I think you kind of get that connection online, you know, people find out about something, but then having that really deep and meaningful relationship and actually talking with someone who is experienced in a similar thing. Like I usually get quite a few messages and whatnot after these shows, basically, from people I know, you know, maybe at the school gates or, you know, in a past job or something like that, and they'll message me saying, I'm going through that, and I'll say, you know, I'll point them in a direction, you know, to someone where that can help them in whatever they're dealing with, or, you know, I'll just kind of have a good conversation with them when I see them at the school gates, or meet for a coffee, and that kind of just, I think that sort of connection is really important, because if you're feeling alone in what you're thinking, then, you know, with online stuff, it's kind of, you know, people will see this show, but then after sort of 10 minutes they'll go away and they'll get on with life. But I think, you know, having that actual personal connection, they kind of would maybe encourage them to feel a lot better about themselves or seek help if they needed that, more so than just kind of seeing or chatting to someone online. So I think
you're right. You're right as well, Serena, because it isn't just daughters, you know, it is granddaughters. Because Emma, we had this conversation, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago? You know, there are many people who are seeing their grandparents going through this, and their parents having to deal with whether it's health or, you know, dementia or whatever, thinking about putting them in a care home. Things like taking away their driving license, you know, it's just, you know, really kind of quite treacherous, all the things that you're having to do to your parents, you know, who have taught you and brought you up and probably helped look after your children. So I think granddaughters as well, absolutely. I think, you know, the forum is called Bad Daughters Club, but, you know, it's a space for granddaughters to go on there as well and talk and get support. And I think it would be great to have, you know, some kind of debate or some kind of, obviously we've got the one at the WOW Festival on Sunday, but it would be great to have more of an event like you do, Emma, to talk about, because actually it's there are funny, you know, growing old doesn't have to all be depressing. There are quite a lot of light and humorous moments that women will share about their stories with their mums and their parents. So, you know, there is quite a lot of potential for a sort of fun and lively discussion, I think.
I met a woman at the event that we met at the other week, and she said that she lives, I think she's Irish, and she goes back to visit her parents in the school holidays to do everything for them.
Yeah,
they live with their son.
Yeah.
She still goes and she's got her own children, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah, so you're right, and I think there's definitely something in a granddaughter thing as well, because I know a friend whose mum is really worried about her own mum, and it's good to be able to know how to support your mum when your parents, when they're starting. So in my family, it's all, like I said, it's all quite young. So I've got my parents are still quite young, but they're going through the process of looking after
I think it's about opening up the discussion as well, because these things aren't talked about at the moment. So things like money, power of attorney, they're just not an open subject. Whereas I think
you're supposed to know what to do.
Our generation was slightly, and sort of your generation, those discussions will have happened already. You'll have seen those discussions probably under a little bit of duress with your grandparents, but hopefully by the time it comes to, for example, you guys looking after your parents, you will have already, it will all be more open, legality and the financial arrangement.
I've got a brother, so I know, like, I love my brother dearly, but we're chalk and cheese, and I know that he'll be rubbish at anything like that. I mean, he barely keeps himself alive. No, he's brilliant, my brother, but he's very relaxed, and it's like what Emma said about the whole, that person she knows who, her brother lives with the parents. That would be my brother. I think, again, we go back to that you think it falls on you as a woman. It falls on you to, in a way, I'm already, even though I'm only 30, thinking that will be down to me. That will be down to me, the source and, care homes, that sort of thing. My brother will be, go along with it and whatnot, but it will be me because of my organisation, the nature of who I am, whereas my brother will just be like, yeah, whatever, I'll do that next week. So
if you weren't there then, you'd have to, wouldn't you?
Yeah. But then would it then fall on his wife, or do you know what I mean? Would it then, that's the problem, isn't it? Would another woman then step up and kind of,
I think it's up to us as women to kind of really start to say no, and to try and encourage and support our partners or our children, male children, to do these things, because we can't do it all. We simply can't, and it is not fair, really. So I just think as women we need to keep on talking, and we need to keep on kind of brainstorming and coming up with ideas and kind of putting pressure on organisations, whether that's employees or government, or for more support. So it doesn't lie solely at our feet, because we might be laying down crying somewhere. Someone will have to do it. If we're not able to do it, someone else has to do it.
I suppose that's the thing as well. Like Emma said, what if, for example, you weren't around? If something happened, or if you drove yourself totally insane because you've got all these balls in the air. I know people that have, unfortunately, like this show was set up for my friend who took her own life because she couldn't handle life. Do you know what I mean? And, don't want it to get to that extreme where women have got so much going on, and then their parents are then thrown in the mix that they've got to care for, and they just can't cope, just can't cope with it. I suppose that's like a worst case scenario, but it helps for people to talk about these things and actually share experiences, doesn't it?
So what you were saying, Helen, about organisations getting involved. So I can see how they can get involved in helping individuals have more, not be at the desks 9 till 5, for example. But that still means that individual is going off to do whatever they've got to do. So what other things can organisations do to help?
Well, I suppose it's looking at, I know, for example, Aviva have put in an awful amount of research and effort into their wellbeing programme for staff. And one of the things that's come out of that is that there's been introduced like quite an amazing parental leave for both mum and dad, so it's not just the 2 weeks for dad. So it's things like that. It's about making it okay for the man to be able to go off and care for someone else. And I think a lot of it is to do with us educating and saying no, and kind of saying to our partners and our children that this that they have to be involved in this, and it can be incredibly hard because ultimately we don't want to hurt anyone. I think especially when it comes to your parents, it comes back to that thing, well, if I don't do it, who will? And if nobody's doing it, is somebody going to end up being hurt because of it? You know, are our parents going to suffer?
And I suppose thinking about organisations, it's okay that they're kind of, you know, promoting like wellness for like everybody and like encouraging the men to kind of do that. But also I suppose like in the world where, you know, a man's ego, you know, you know, are some men just going to go, well, I'm not going to do that because that's not, you know, the social stance of things, and so it's very difficult. I think, like you say, it's the education side of things to actually get our younger generations to kind of grow up with that being the
Definitely. And I think things have shifted. You know, things have shifted, haven't they? You know, you were saying that your husband does a lot more around the home, although he might need a congratulations and a kind of, you know, woohoo, well done. But like things are shifting. They are shifting. So I think, you know, I think we just need to keep on talking, and certainly around the parental care side of things, because it's not as open as being a mother to young children. You know, we need to keep on talking about these things and raising awareness to it, and bringing it out in the open so it's not so taboo. And hopefully websites like Age Space, if it is the woman that's doing it, as we know, it will just make it a little bit easier for them because it is all in one place, you know, rather than having to look all over the place for various bits of information. That's one of the theories behind Age Space, is that it's kind of trying to make it easier, trying to take less of the burden, more of the burden away from the person doing that research. But yeah, I think it is a big education thing.
And I suppose it's like anything, you know, years and years ago, like you said before, you know, places like, you know, Mumsnet and whatnot, you would get criticised, whereas the more and more people have openly talked about their experiences, it becomes normal to be more honest. Whereas I suppose we're still at that stage where it's still a taboo subject with the, you know, the parents and looking after. So hopefully, you know, in the next sort of 5-10 years, the more, you know, you go out and talk about it and talk to each other about it and actually push it out there, it will become, you know, again, the norm, how it is with talking about motherhood quite openly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, it's like you've got this whole wave of parenting stuff now. It's definitely become more a mainstream thing, hasn't it? Honest parenting, whereas what Helen's talking about is, yeah, it's not mainstream at all. In fact, I don't think. So I reckon it can happen. Just needs the right people.
Mm.
Do you think, Emma, your chap who's coming in a couple of weeks' time, the daddy, what's his name?
Simon Hooper. He's the father of daughters.
Father of daughters, that's it. So is he a stay-at-home dad?
No, not at all.
No, he's not.
He's got a really successful full-time job. I don't know how he does it. Seriously.
But I suppose in a way, it's role models like that, isn't it? It's kind of more men blogging and talking about, you know, how supportive they are.
What the problem is, though, I don't know how you get around this, but he finds that I think it's 80% or more of his audience are women. He set it up in order to talk to dads because he felt like there was a gap. And there is a big dad audience on Instagram now, actually. I can't remember, I saw a big network, I can't think what they're called now, because he put a post out saying, you know, is there anyone out there? And then lots of people came out, oh, yeah, there's this account and this account. So there is a dad audience out there, but it's quite small. Like, my husband wouldn't go on it.
No, mine wouldn't either, no.
So I think...
So where do they talk? Where do men talk?
In the pub or at work. My husband's a builder, so he kind of, you know, building site talk. I don't know.
Would they talk about issues like that? Would they talk about kind of issues to do with parenting?
I don't think they really do, you know, men.
No.
Maybe if, I don't know. I don't think my husband would talk about an issue like that at the pub or even at work. Or
my husband's very black and white, so he's just like, yeah, this is how it is. Just get on with it and move on. That's how he is. It's very sort of You know, he's very caring.
But the good thing is that for someone like Simon, the father-daughter's chat, if he does talk about something, then all the women who listen to that will obviously bring it into the home, and then they will talk about it, and maybe that's where men get their input from. I don't know.
Do you think men have an inner dialogue? You know, are they constantly?
No. So me and my husband have this thing where he has one man lying on a couch in his head, and I've got a table in my head. There's about 8 different women in there, all doing different things, and they're all chatting. They're always filing, or they're all doing stuff. And that's exactly how I think. That's how he is. He's adamant that he's got one guy in his head, and he does sometimes think of nothing.
Yeah,
I can't get my head around. I'm like, that's amazing. It's like,
my husband's like that. Yeah, he literally, like, he says, you know, with women, because we're so complex, the levels of, you know, if you fell out with a friend or something's going on, you're like analysing it in kind of pros, cons, you know, what's going on. With him, he's like, oh, well, if they're being funny, just like move on. You know, that's his kind of thought process, you know. And sometimes I'm actually quite envious. I'm like, I wish I could just kind of think in that very black and white manner, because then literally life would just be a conveyor belt. You'd be like, right, okay, problem, yeah, okay, that's the solution, problem, solution. But the thing is, with women, we've got all these problems, and the solutions are coming from different, and there may be that solution didn't work, so we then got to do it differently. But I don't know, they say, you know, women, Venus, Mars, and that kind of thing, and I do think that's true on some levels. Yeah.
Oh, it's a tricky one. We'll see what happens on the debate. See if we actually get any answers to it. I think it's going to be a long-term conversation.
Yeah. But I suppose again, that's the kind of where it's a woman event, you know, and there's going to be a lot of women there, so talk on how we are very one-sided, but it would be good to have that like male perspective, wouldn't it? You know, it would be
good to have had a man on the panel, definitely. Kind of, you know, he would have probably been shot down.
That's probably why they probably tried to get someone, but no one would put their hand up.
The lion's den, I think, on that one, wouldn't it be? But yeah. So we'll see what happens. I don't think there's any kind of quick fix solutions. I think it's kind of
I think we could kind of talk about this till the cows come home, because there's so much more that we could talk about. But we are coming sort of to the end of the hour, so thank you so much to both of you. I think from our, you know, the main sort of theme that's come out of this is kind of that emotional, that kind of guilt, those people in your head, and kind of like, I think Emma sort of hit the nail on the head and said sometimes you just have to accept what you've got and kind of build a barrier around, you know, from all those judgmental voices and whatnot, even your own. So
I think that's a really good support network, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you said, Helen, again, actually talking about these things, and it would be good to kind of get together, and maybe Emma, you throw an event, and I'm happy to help where possible, and Helen, I'm happy to help with getting a group together.
A bad daughters club event where people can come and discuss this further. It would be great.
Yeah, that would be amazing, definitely. So, but thank you both so much. Have you got anything to add finally? Did you just want to both mention your next events again, the Emma, your event, and the Women of the World Festival again, so people know about those?
Shall I go first?
Yeah, go for it.
My event is on Wednesday night, actually. So in 48 hours' time, we'll be in the forum, in the auditorium, talking to Anna Whitehouse, his mother Pucker. So I'm really excited about meeting her, like fangirling, seriously, really excited. And that's all about flexible working, and she's campaigning flexible working, not just for parents, but for anyone. And she's, you know, she's talking to Parliament about it. She's going all the way. She's amazing. And also talking about parenting. She's one of the most honest parenting people out there, and she's going to be signing her book for the women that come. They are mainly women. I think it's one guy. So that's my next event, and it's on my website, wegotthisco.com. There's like 6 tickets left. So
wow,
get them fast. Awesome,
brilliant. And yes, I will be at the WOW Festival, which is happening all weekend at the Open and the Arts Centre, and so lots of amazing speakers and events and activities going on to kind of empower women. My discussion that I'm involved in is on Sunday at 12 o'clock at the forum. And actually, Emma, you might know, so the person on the panel with me is Mother Like No Other.
Yes.
So that would be quite interesting as well. Are you coming? Are either of you two coming?
Yes, I'm going to. I'm actually one of the mentors, so I won't be able to make your session because it's at 12 at open. So, but yeah, I'll be there on Monday. Yeah.
Ah,
I'm coming to listen. So Becky is she's another Instagram sort of sensation, business sensation, Mother Like No Other. Yeah. So
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ah.
The clothing. Awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much. Actually, just plug in the next show, which will be on the 7th of May, here in the group at 8 o'clock normal time. We're actually extending this a bit further from what we've touched upon it a little bit today. We're talking to Ursula, who came to the her conference and was a speaker, and good friend of mine, Sarah, who's a surveyor, and we're talking about gender stereotypes in professional roles and the gender pay gap. So we're kind of touching on that subject and how men and women sort of fall into different roles, and the sort of the glass ceilings that are there for women and that sort of thing. So that's going to be on the 7th of May in the group. So thank you ever so much for everyone for joining us, and thank you ever so much to Emma and Helen for being here this evening.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. Bye-bye. Bye.